What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to be talking about bounce back players. We're going to go over 5 players who struggled last year and then talk about what went wrong, what it looks like for their outlook in 2022, and then whether or not I'll be buying them at their price a year after disappointing in fantasy football. So with that being said, we're not going to waste any time on this video. If you enjoyed it at any point in time, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
So at the top, we're going to talk about Allen Robinson. And I think one of the best ways to gauge how bad a player was for your team is to look at best ball win rates. And best ball win rate is the percentage of teams that won their championship with said players. So if Cooper Kupp has a 30% win rate, 30% of people who drafted Cooper Kupp won their league. And an average win rate is 1 divided by 12, right? One person in a 12-man league, 8.3%. So anything, I would say, over 8.3% is good. I would say anything under like 6% is really bad, and I would call that a bust. And Allen Robinson last year was a 3rd-round pick, and he returned a 4.6% win rate. Not good. And when we look back and we kind of figure out what went wrong with Allen Robinson, and that's kind of what we're going to be doing in this video, is almost trying to figure out exactly what went wrong, kind of putting on our detective hat, our Sherlock Holmes hat, and deciding what went wrong, and is it enough that we can sort of sweep it under the rug for 2022 and be back in at a discounted price. And when we look at Allen Robinson's 2021, it's hard to really say what happened. Like, I don't even really know what to make of it. He had a bunch of consecutive seasons of like 90 plus catches, 1,000 plus yards, and then in 12 games last year, he puts up 38 catches, 410 yards, and 1 touchdown. Like bottom of the barrel type numbers. He goes from a 25% target share to a 19% target share, just career lows across the board. And the only reasons I can really point to as to why this happened was injuries. He missed 5 games last year due to ankle and hamstring sprains. And then you also have rumors that he sort of quit on the team. The Bears were 6-11. They had Justin Fields at quarterback. They even had, I want to say, Andy Dalton for some games. Matt Nagy was sort of just putting handcuffs on the entire offense. So I guess I kind of understand him just saying, you know what, I just want to get through this year healthy, and then I'll be a free agent in the offseason. I guess that makes sense. And I really wanted to talk about Allen Robinson because he's such a puzzle for me in 2022. He now goes at the 412 as the wide receiver 23, and that's not a massive discount. He was, again, a 3rd-round pick last year. We're getting him at the 4-5 turn instead of like the 3-4 turn this year. I 100% understand that he's in a new spot, and the bull case kind of just writes itself, right? He goes from the Bears to the Rams. He gets the best quarterback of his career after having Christian Hackenberg at Penn State, Blake Bortles on the Jaguars, Mitch Trubisky on the Bears, just a all-time list of bad quarterbacks. He goes to the Rams, is going to have the best quarterback of his career, so it should be wheels up, right? And I see it, right? Since 2015, he's only maxed out at 7 touchdowns, right? In 2015, I want to say that was like his 14 touchdown Blake Bortles year when Blake Bortles was crazy in garbage time and you had Allen Hurns being a fantasy relevant wide receiver as well. He's maxed out at 6 touchdowns since then. On this Rams team, they were 3rd in red zone attempts last year. So it makes sense that him as this big body wide receiver, he now has the biggest touchdown upside of his entire career. He's going to have the best quarterback of his entire career. And there's also reason to believe that he's not completely washed and that he's still a talented wide receiver at like 28, 29 years old. He crushed reception perception, which is really crazy to see from a guy who didn't produce at all last year. He was still 81st percentile against man and 96th percentile against press. That press number is still an elite number. So again, it's really easy to buy back in. Rams, best quarterback, touchdown upside, reception perception shows that he's not completely fallen off a cliff. My main pushback is price and age profile. So again, I'm kind of talking out loud here with these players and weighing sort of the good and bad out loud. And when we look at Allen Robinson, going off the board at the 412 was the wide receiver 23. The issue for me is that I prefer Kittle, I prefer Metcalf, and then I also prefer those year 2 upside swings like Elijah Moore, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Rashad Bateman. Now, those are just the profiles that I chase. They have more upside than a guy like Allen Robinson. And Allen Robinson, to me, is a little bit scary. He's 29. He's coming off the worst season of his career, and all of his upside is capped by Cooper Kupp's 30% target share. And that's not to say that he's a must fade. I just think that he's a profile we want to be conscious of. We want to be targeting profiles that are little misses and big wins. Allen Robinson doesn't feel like that. He feels like a small to medium win and a pretty big whiff if you spend a 4th round pick on it. I'm not sure there's really a massive difference between Allen Robinson and Adam Thielen as bets this year. They're both old wide receivers. And you might say the Vikings aren't anything close to the Rams passing game, but they just brought in one of the Rams passing game coordinators, and they're going to be running a modern offense. Justin Jefferson's there. That's kind of the Cooper Kupp. Adam Thielen's a really similar bet. You could actually project him in a really similar range. I want to say Mike Clay has them almost back-to-back. And when we look at Mike Clay's projections, Mike Clay is pretty conservative on him. He only has Allen Robinson at the wide receiver 30 with a 20% target share and has him for 119 targets, 71 catches, 920 yards, 6 touchdowns. And that's probably a fine expectation after what we saw last year. And I say all this to say that I get the situation's great. I'm a little bit weary of what the profile looks like just as a 29-year-old wide receiver capped by Cooper Kupp. So wide receiver 23 at the 4-5 turns, a little bit too rich for me. But I do have him ranked as like my wide receiver 26 as a mid-fifth rounder. So I'm really not that far off. The biggest issue for Allen Robinson is I'm not drafting him a ton because there's not a spot in the draft where he'll be on the board without Metcalf, Kittle, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, Amon-Ra St. Brown still being available. So I'm rarely taking him unless if I'm sort of setting up a Ram stack, which even then is really rare for me to even be thinking about in like the 5th round. And if I have Cooper Kupp, I'm not really eager to get Allen Robinson. I'd rather take like a late round dart on like a Van Jefferson or a Tyler Higbee or even like a Darrell Henderson if I want to get that kind of correlation. So again, he's not someone I'm drafting a ton of. He's not a must fade for me. I have him again as like a 5th round wide receiver. He's just not somebody I'm taking a lot of. Then we have another tough one, and we have JuJu SmithSchuster, who's going at the 508 as the wide receiver 27 on Underdog. And JuJu is an enigma, man. He is like 25, 26. He's not old at all. He had 2 really strong seasons out the gate where rookie season was strong. Second season was like a top 5 wide receiver in the same offense with Antonio Brown, commanded over like 140 targets. Really, really strong season. Since then, though, that was 2018. 2019 through 2021, he has been atrocious. I mean, he was the wide receiver 60 in 2019, wide receiver 24 in 2020. Wasn't bad. This past year, 5 games, he was shut down due to a shoulder injury, and it's pretty easy to see why in 2021 he had a 3.6% win rate as a 6th round pick. That is really bad. Here's a little bit of what my gripe is. He's going actually a round ahead of where he went last year. Now, I understand that he gets a situation upgrade. I'm just saying we're not really getting a big talent discount after not seeing for 3 years that he can play. I mean, I guess wide receiver 24 in 2020 can justify a wide receiver 27 price tag if he can do that on the Steelers, but we're really not getting any kind of discount. Now, I sort of understand that because he is going to the Chiefs, where we know the Chiefs will be top 5 in pass attempts, yards, touchdowns, and that definitely means something. But I think it's probably wrong to just blindly bet on JuJu because of his surrounding factors. And why I say that is because when we look at Mike Clay's projections, I love looking at his projections. I bring them up like almost every video, but I don't look at them to just look at the player ranks and then I just plug those into my rankings. I do it to sort of see the logistics of fantasy points. And I think this is where Mike Clay's projections come into play because he has the Chiefs offense leading the league in like attempts, yards, touchdowns. He has Mahomes projected for 4,600 passing yards, 36 touchdowns as the QB2 in all of fantasy. Again, leading the league in pass attempts. And even then, JuJu is projected as the wide receiver 31, 75 catches, 837 yards, 7 touchdowns with an 18% target share. I think that's about right. I just have a hard time deciding what his ceiling looks like because if we want to be optimistic, we can say, well, he was amazing in year 2. I know we're 3 years out from that, but he's still young. Maybe he can sort of get that spark going that he had in year 2, and we can see him almost come into a Cooper Kupp type role on this team as a slot wide receiver, maybe see that 24-25% target share that he saw in year 2, and then from then you can squint and kind of see him have a top 15, top 12 type season. I think it's in the cards. Now, when it comes to JuJu's price and what I'm doing with him in 2022, I'm sort of shrugging at the wide receiver 27 price tag. I have him at wide receiver 30 in my rankings. I have him in this exact same range. I'm still taking Elijah Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown over him, but if I have Mahomes, if I have a Kelsey, and I want to get like some Chiefs correlation going, I think he's fine. Even without them, like I think a naked JuJu SmithSchuster without stacking is probably also fine. He's a decent profile. He's not someone that's a must fade for me. Not a must draft either, but he's right about on par with where ADP has him. I think he's a fine bet there. Now, this next player is going to be JuJu SmithSchuster's teammate, Clyde EdwardsHelaire, going at the 801 as the RB28. And he was bad last year. He had a 301 ADP with a 5.3% win rate. And you can kind of blame injury with CEH, right? He played through 4 weeks, and then he had an injury where he missed a few games. But even through 4 weeks, he was the RB23. and you were drafting him as like a top 12, top 15 type guy, so he wasn't paying off even before the injury. Now, I will say I honestly don't mind Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 2022. He's heading into, I believe this is going to be year 3 now. It's a very similar bet to what it was last year. Not a ton of competition, top 5 offense, and that's really all you have to buy into, him being a first-round pick as well in the NFL draft. Same exact thesis, going in the 8th round. I should want to be all over that, but again, the issue that I have with Clyde is that I'm just not sure that he's good. Of the 50 running backs with 100-plus rush attempts on PFF, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was 39th in rushing grade, 45th in yards after contact per attempt, 40th in breakaway run percentage, 42nd in yards per out run, 37th in elusive rating. Not even in the top half for any of those skill talent-based metrics. We've seen bad backs carried by volume. I think the way that Clyde Edwards-Helaire wins money for people in 2022 is he just LeGarrette Blunts his way into like 18 touchdowns, but I probably doubt that happens. And even as pessimistic as I am on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, with all that being said, I still have CEH about where ADP has him in my rankings. I have him as an 8th rounder in the RB 28-ish range. That is right where he goes on Underdog. Now, I will say I prefer Ronald Jones at cost. I prefer Jerick McKinnon at cost. I think they're all great targets to have, but I think that it would be a mistake going into the 2022 season without any CEH exposure. This feels a lot like the Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones situation on the Buccaneers. Last year, I was way overweight on Ronald Jones, had almost no Leonard Fournette. I think with this offense, there's going to be somebody that emerges. I think Ronald Jones, McKinnon, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire will win leagues in 2022. I'm not sure which one, so I think that at that point, you just kind of have to spread out your exposure. I will have more Ronald Jones than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think it would be a mistake to fade Clyde Edwards-Helaire completely, because now we have a spot where their offensive line is actually really good. Creed Humphrey is amazing. I want to say they even have a tackle that I can't think of. I want to say Orlando Brown, but he's trying to get a deal in place, so I'm not sure if he's actually going to be playing for them for 2022, but you have a spot where with Tyreek Hill gone, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is drawing live for like 75 plus targets and double-digit touchdowns on a high-scoring team. So that's kind of the appeal there. It's not sexy, it's not fun, but in these like 0 RB, hero RB type builds, I think he's fine once you get outside of those top 7 rounds. Now, with this 4th player, we're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk, who goes at the 805 as the wide receiver 43. And we've done a lot of shoulder shrugging today and saying, this player sucked in 2021. This is how I feel about him. ADP has this price right. But with Brandon Aiyuk, this is where we're taking a stand, because I'm loving the discount on Brandon Aiyuk. I know that he only had a 4.9% win rate last year as a 5th-round investment, but when you look back at 2021, what happened was really weird. Shanahan put him in like the doghouse, this like theoretical thing where he just wasn't playing. He didn't see a 90+% snap share until week 8. From week 8 on, when he was finally introduced back into the offense, which, by the way, it's just crazy to me to take someone like Brandon Aiyuk, 1st-round wide receiver, and just decide to not properly utilize him through 7 weeks because of some ego-related thing. I don't know. I just think it's dumb. It's one of the reasons why, as great as Kyle Shanahan is when it comes to play calling, I just think that it's absolutely insane how arrogant he is to just not use Aiyuk and not use his players' talents to the best of their abilities. Like, I can't see a Brian Dable ever pulling something like that, or even like a Sean McVay. Like, imagine Sean McVay last year just decided, okay, Robert Woods, you're done. I'm yanking you. You're not playing for a while. Just on a whim. Makes no sense to me. But again, Aiyuk, when he was reintroduced back into the offense, was wide receiver 24 in points per game. And we fast forward to now, he's the wide receiver 43 in ADP. After last year, we saw everything go wrong, and he still kind of savaged together some fantasy point finishes down the stretch. So assuming he isn't in the doghouse for 2022, which hopefully is a lock, right? This is a 3rd-year player that Kyle Shanahan drafted, and he used down the stretch last year. I mean, we're praying that he doesn't put him back in the doghouse. Like, it's insane that we even have to worry about that, but I do think that he's already out of it. He proved himself. He's probably fine. But when we look at what Brandon Aiyuk did in his rookie year, we have reason to believe that he is going to be a really talented player. He had an 80-plus PFF grade in year 1, and honestly, only studs do that. We only have 15 wide receivers ever. I believe a couple entered this year. I'm not sure if it was Chase or Waddle or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but when we look from 2021 before that, we have Antonio Brown, Demaryius Thomas, Keenan Allen, Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Dwayne Bowe, Percy Harvin, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin. Just all hits. And Brandon Aiyuk averaged 15.4 points per game that season, ahead of the rookie marks of Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin. He looked the part through year 1, and then his trajectory completely got thrown off by Kyle Shanahan, and now we're heading into year 3, and it's pretty much a similar bet to what we were making last year. Debo's still there, Kittle's still there, and that definitely hurts his ceiling a little bit. But we still know that this is a good player. He was flirting with top 24 numbers last year. He commands targets. He still put up a decent reception perception this year. I want to say he was like 80th plus percentile against press. And I also don't really get the idea of fading him because of Trey Lance. Trey Lance actually fits Aiyuk's playstyle a little bit more, where Aiyuk leads the team in ADOT, and Trey Lance pushes the ball downfield more than any quarterback they've had. Jimmy Garoppolo is somebody who likes to check down the ball a little bit more. I think Trey Lance will actually push it downfield to Brandon Aiyuk a little bit more, which makes him interesting. And we know pass catchers break out in year 3. We saw it last year with Marquise Brown. Deontay Johnson was a year 3 breakout. I want to say as well, Deebo Samuel was a year 3 breakout. I think Aiyuk is drawing live to be one of those guys for this year. So as I said, 805 is the wide receiver 43. Absolute smash. I would probably draft him in like the 6th round if it came to it. Then I wanted to touch on J.K. Dobbins because he's such a hot topic right now, and he is somebody coming off a down year. He's going at the 5'11 as the RB21 right now. Last season, he was a 3rd rounder and returned a 3.1% win rate. And it's not like we have to do some detective work to figure out what happened. He tore his ACL in the preseason. I will say, I think just calling it an ACL is being a little bit optimistic. The actual injury itself, he tore his ACL, LCL, and meniscus, and the return to play from that kind of injury is 12 to 15 months. He had surgery, I want to say September 7th last year, so first week of September. So he would be on an exact 12-month recovery timeline to play by week 1. Now, the reason that it's a hot topic is because him and Ian Rappaport went back and forth. Rappaport said J.K. Dobbins is no sure thing for week 1. He hasn't had any setbacks, but his knee injury was a serious one, and Baltimore has no incentive to rush him back. Dobbins replied, okay, I'm tired of being quiet. Come to me for your source because I might not even go on PUP because that's how good my rehab is going, and I'm damn sure going to be ready for week 1. The issue is that like a couple days after this came out, J.K. Dobbins gets put on the PUP, which is the physically unable to perform list. Doesn't mean anything in stone right now because it's just training camp, but as the season goes on, I believe if you get put on the PUP in like preseason or like late August, somewhere around there, if you get put on the PUP by then you're missing minimum 4 weeks, which is scary. Now, this doesn't mean he's a lock to miss time. It's not a great sign, and if I'm being honest, he's not someone I'm drafting right now. I think he's super talented. He was really efficient in year 1. If he was fully healthy, I'd actually be interested in J.K. Dobbins in that Breece Hall, Travis Etienne area of just being a young, efficient back. We haven't seen him do it yet. He has Lamar Jackson out there. That spikes running back efficiency. But when we have players who we don't know are 100% healthy, and especially lower body injuries this far out, it's usually bad news. We saw it last year with Gibson's shin injury where that lingered the entire year. You had Saquon Barkley coming off an ACL injury last year. Same thing with Cortland Sutton. A lot of these guys coming off of ACLs haven't been good recently. You also had, I want to say Darren Waller had like an ankle sprain in preseason, and then that sort of carried him through the season. So it's not a great investment to make. I think 5th round is still too rich for me. I don't think I'd want to take him unless if he falls like a round past his ADP. And then at that point, I guess I'll just scoop him for value in like the 7th or 8th round. But he's not somebody I'm eagerly drafting. He's somebody I'm underweight on at this point. And I'm happy to be behind the mark. Like if it comes out that he's fully healthy and now he skyrockets from like 5'11 to like a 405 type pick, I'll happily pay the premium just to know that he's actually healthy. And even then, I'll be a little bit squeamish because that knee injury is tough. I think it's rough to expect him to sort of give you a full season of running back production. So right now, I'm a little bit down on J.K. Dobbins until we get some more positive news from that situation. Now, that's going to do it for us today. I just wanted to come out here and talk about players who were bad last year and sort of talk about what I think about them coming into 2022. Not necessarily 5 guys that are going to be guaranteed bounce backs, because I'm not for or against a lot of players like a Clyde EdwardsHelaire. Like, there's a bunch of players I definitely feel strongly about where it's like definitely draft A.J. Brown, don't draft Russell Gage. But there are players that are sort of meh about. Like, I don't know. Maybe you should pull my analyst card for this, but I think a lot of analysts just sort of make takes on every player. Sometimes players are properly priced. So I did just want to talk about some players that were about properly priced, but I sort of just wanted to talk through how I'm thinking about them in 2022. So with all that being said, if you enjoyed the video, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena.